Hello, ladies and gents. Welcome to CGRX, and this is why the US Navy used sonic shields to capture the Venezuelan. Our channel Navy Decoded. This video was posted 5 days ago. How the fuck did he know? January 3rd, 2026, Caracas, Venezuela, to insert Delta Force team into hostile capital. Silence isn't always the answer. Sometimes the optimal solution is flood the battle space with certainty. We decode the technical sonic shield, a strategy that used the USS RR-4 to weaponize tempo, geometry, human perception. Yeah, okay. I guess this is not about like sonic weapons, or is it? I don't know. This is gonna be very interesting because I just watched, Asmogol reaction, but like how USA used sonic weapon and account of one of the soldiers there, like what it felt like when US Delta Force just attacked. It sounded straight out of Warhammer. That's how insane that was. So this is going to be interesting. Let's watch this one.
January 3rd, 2026, Caracas, Venezuela, 11:47 p.m. 200 miles offshore, the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group is executing the century's most spectacular deception. The media will call this a raid. They are wrong. They aren't staging an attack. They aren't rehearsing deterrence. They are engineering a state of reality. To insert a Delta Force team into a hostile capital without detection, stealth isn't always the answer. Silence isn't either. Sometimes the optimal solution isn't to disappear. It is to flood the battle space with certainty. Too much signal, too much activity, until nothing beneath it is considered abnormal. This is a paradox. You don't need silence. You need noise. Remember Panama in 1989? The US used rock music to psychologically terrorize the enemy. That was crude harassment. But 2026 is different. This is the evolution from psychological warfare to a technical sonic shield. We are weaponizing tempo, geometry, and human perception.
People, could you give this guy some love? He has only 13,000 subscribers. He has a nearly million views on this, nearly. We should have more because this was posted 5 days ago, as in like close to when it happened. Holy shit, he jumped on it very early, right? He knew about this very early.
Think about it. Every radar in Venezuela was scanning the sky. Every intelligence officer was filtering audio frequencies. They heard everything. And that was the fatal flaw. When the USS Ford pushes its systems to surge tempo, creating a ceaseless jet engine roar over the Caribbean, the sensors get overloaded, not by malfunction, but by excess information. They don't see an invasion. They see normal dominance. They see standard procedure. And beneath that perfect cover of familiarity, 4 Chinook helicopters are skimming the water, their rotor noise swallowed whole by the calculated chaos above. The Delta Force team isn't sneaking in.
Okay, I'm one of the biggest fan of Chinook there ever will be, but why didn't they use Ospreys? Because I guess they didn't have to. Is that the case? Or do Ospreys don't fall? Like before I didn't know that, but like the more and more I've watched throughout the years, I realized like how arms of military are different. Marines, Navy, Army, they're all different. So do they didn't have access to Osprey? What happened? Why didn't they use Osprey? I guess Osprey is for like long distance. Osprey is basically Chinook minus certain capabilities, but it can also turn into a plane if the propeller is high, so it can go really high speed. They didn't need that, I guess.
In through the window. They are walking through the front door while the doorman is covering his ears. If you feel proud of American engineering, the kind that turns physics into the ultimate weapon, type proud in the comments. Today, we decode the mathematics that turned the Caribbean into an acoustic prison. Let's start with the machine that made it possible. To maintain over 100 aircraft, airborne across the strike group, the USS Ford needs to launch and recover jets at industrial pace. Every 2 minutes, a jet catapults off the deck. Every 3 minutes, another one lands. For 6 straight hours. Old Nimitz-class carriers can't do this. They're limited.
What the fuck? You just gave me a visual. 6 hours, massive Gerald Ford, and like constantly like jet after jet going and landing. Imagine the noise for 6 hours straight. Holy shit, that's insanity. Imagine like people like, in USA is like, all this technology, do we need it? F-22 was never basically used. Gerald R. Ford is made, launched, and now being used like this. Imagine using this technology, it feels like, oh yeah, this money is well spent.
Limited by steam pressure. Launch too many jets too quickly, the pressure drops, catapults lose power, and jets drop into the ocean. The USS Gerald R. Ford doesn't use steam. It uses electrons. The Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, EMALS, is a railgun for aircraft.
EMALS?
Electricity flows through coils embedded in the flight deck. Magnetic fields push the launch shuttle forward. The jet accelerates from 0 to 170 miles per hour in 2 seconds. EMALS recharges in 45 seconds. The old steam system needed 4 minutes.
Utilizing electromagnetism, this is basically as peak is gonna get. You're not gonna get anything better than this. So yeah, this is like literally latest technology.
Do the math with me. The goal is to keep over 100 aircraft from the strike group in the air constantly. On a traditional carrier, you hit a bottleneck. You can launch, but you can't recover and relaunch fast enough because of the steam recharge time. Gaps appear in the formation. The sonic shield breaks. But with EMALS cycling every 45 seconds,
I love this. Steam, basically like 2 centuries old. Steam. And straight to electromagnetism. Nothing in between. Straight jump.
the Ford creates a seamless conveyor belt. It launches a wave of jets, recovers the previous wave, refuels, and shoots them back out before the acoustic decibels ever drop. The Navy calls this sortie generation rate. In this operation, the Ford hit a tempo equivalent to its maximum surge rate of 270 sorties per day. This is operational overmatch. You are cycling aircraft faster than the enemy radar can track them. But the launch system is only half the equation. The other half is logistics. This is where the pit stop theory comes in. On a standard carrier, rearming a fighter jet is a logistical nightmare. You have to bring bombs up from the deep magazines using wire rope elevators, move them manually across the deck, and navigate through a maze of parked aircraft. It's slow, it's dangerous. The USS Ford changed the geometry of the deck. They moved the island, the command tower, further back, creating massive open spaces, specifically designed for NASCAR.
Okay, I was about to say, isn't it just because of the size it looks back? No, it's really back. Like, look at that. Look at the space in here compared to this.
Style pit stops. Using the advanced weapons elevators, which operate on electromagnetic rails rather than cables, ordnance travels from the magazine directly to the flight deck at 150 feet per minute. There is no restaging. There is no waiting. The bomb arrives right next to the wing of the F-35. This reduced the turnaround time, the time from landing to launching again, from 40 minutes down to 22 minutes. That 18-minute saving, multiplied by 100 aircraft, creates an accumulative advantage of 1,800 minutes of operational time. That is how you sustain a sonic shield. You don't just fly faster, you work smarter. But the real secret is power. The A-1B nuclear reactor generates 3 times the electrical capacity of the old Nimitz class. Let's look at the thermodynamics. The old A-4W reactors produced enough electricity for a small town. The new A-1B reactors produce 13,800 volts of distribution capability, enough to power a city. Why do we need
Oh my god, I didn't know it was that much of a difference. Did I forgot? I'm pretty sure I watched the video. I don't know, man. Damn! Nimitz can charge a properly sized town, but this can charge an entire fucking city. That's how much power it generates. I love how, like, when it comes to military technology, we're like, okay, you know what, let's just use nuclear reactors and advance them. But we don't want to do that shit in real life. I love how this is being used. See, this is what I mean. Again, I don't want to piss off any Chinese people in the comments, but how the fuck China is going to match this? Let's be honest. Like, people say, oh, China did this, China did that. I hear about all the time. Well, China has surpassed US military. How? In which way? Are you fucking kidding me? Sonic weapons and all this shit. Look at this Ford class aircraft carriers. Every small details. How are you going to surpass that?
13,800 volts. Because the radar, the the catapults, and even the elevators are all hungry for electrons. By eliminating the steam pipes that used to run through the ship, the Navy removed the most maintenance-heavy component of a carrier. No steam leaks, no corrosion, just pure, raw voltage. This power allows us to outcycle the enemy. While their pilots are still refueling on the ground, ours are already back in the air. We force them to fight at a tempo they physically cannot sustain. The USS Gerald R. Ford positioned itself exactly 380 nautical miles northeast of Caracas. Not 350, not 400, exactly 380. Why? The F-35C Lightning II has a combat radius of approximately 770 miles on internal fuel. Position the Ford at 380 miles, and the aircraft can reach Caracas, orbit for 90 minutes, and return with fuel reserves intact. Perfect geometry. The Navy positioned the entire strike group in a clockwise rotation pattern. The Ford sits at the center. Our Lee Burke destroyers orbit at 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock positions, each exactly 50 miles from the carrier. This creates overlapping radar coverage. 4 destroyers in diamond pattern means every cubic foot of airspace within 500 miles is monitored simultaneously. Venezuela's Air Force didn't stand a chance. Not because they lacked aircraft, because they lacked information.
And also they lacked aircraft. What are you talking about? The guy literally just said like, okay, we are dealing with something alien level shit here. We were attacked by sonic weapons, like we were bleeding through nose. This is on the ground. When it comes to technology, there is no, even if they did something with the aircraft, let's just say they somehow became airborne, they would have been blown up left and right. Venezuelan Air Force cannot even come close to comprehending any of this.
Every time a Venezuelan Su-30 took off, the strike group knew 18 seconds after wheels up. The pilot would see 12 American fighters already positioned between him and the coast. He'd turn around and land. This is naval quarantine. You don't invade the airspace. You make entering it mathematically suicidal. But the clockwise rotation served another purpose. Fuel management. Jet fuel weighs 6.8 pounds per gallon. An F-35C carries 13,300 pounds internally. Flying in circular pattern with prevailing winds reduces fuel consumption by 11% versus straight-line flight. Run those numbers across the strike group over 6 hours. That 11% efficiency saves roughly 290,000 pounds of fuel. Enough to extend the operation by 90 additional minutes. The geometry wasn't just tactical, it was logistical insurance. Midnight in Caracas.
Here we go.
The Delta Force team moves through streets lit only by flickering street lamps. Visibility should be 0. But the operators see everything. We don't use floodlights, we use electrons. Every F-35 in that sonic shield is scanning. The AN/APG-81 radar paints a 3-dimensional picture of the city below. Not visible light, radar energy. But the Caribbean is a radar nightmare. Here is the atmospheric physics problem that usually blinds navies in this region. It's called evaporation ducting. In the hot, humid Caribbean, water evaporates rapidly from the ocean's surface, creating a layer of dense, moist air right above the waves. When standard radar waves hit this layer, they get trapped. They bend downward. They bounce unpredictably. It creates a ghost image. A radar operator might see a ship that isn't there, or miss a low-flying missile entirely because the radar beam was refracted into the water. This is why the USS Ford has unicorn status. It's the only ship in the fleet equipped with dual-band radar, combining SPY-3 X-band and SPY-4 S-band frequencies. This system was designed specifically to pierce the clutter of the Caribbean archipelago. While single-band radars get confused by the evaporation ducts and islands.
X-ray band, I'm guessing. High frequency, yeah, makes sense. Radars, microwaves and radar obviously would have a problem because they don't have that much energy to them. That's how it works. Well, X-ray does, right? So yeah, that makes sense. It would require a lot of energy to use them. I mean, Ford obviously has it with a nuclear reactor.
The Ford's dual frequencies filter out the geography. The S-band, volume search, scans the upper atmosphere, ignoring the surface clutter. The X-band, horizon search, uses a narrower, higher frequency beam that is less susceptible to moisture refraction. It cuts through the humidity like a laser through fog. The enemy thinks they can hide behind the islands or the humidity. The Ford sees right through them. When the Delta Force team requested overhead surveillance, they got live thermal imaging from an F-35 orbiting 40,000 feet above, updated every 1.2 seconds. This is the invisible floodlight. We illuminate the battlefield with data. But there's a problem with the F-35C. It can reach Caracas in 28 minutes from the Ford's position. 28 minutes is an eternity when your team is compromised. 80 miles closer to the Venezuelan coast, the USS Baton, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, has been maintaining radio silence. On her deck sit 18 F-35B Lightning IIs.
Isn't it Iwo Jima? Wasn't that the amphibious ship?
Now let's talk about the engineering miracle of the F-35B. The F-35C on the Ford launches with a catapult. The F-35B doesn't need one. It creates its own lift. Behind the cockpit sits a massive lift fan. It's not powered by a separate engine. It's powered by the main jet engine through a carbon fiber drive shaft. This is the most stressed mechanical component in aviation history. When the pilot hits the hover button, a clutch engages. This clutch has to transfer 29,000 horsepower from the jet turbine to the lift fan in a split second. That is equivalent to the power of 40 Formula One cars being transferred through a single shaft instantly. Simultaneously, the rear nozzle swivels 90 degrees downward. The plane balances on a column of 40,000 pounds of thrust. Because of this short takeoff and vertical landing (STOVL) capability, the USS Baton doesn't need to turn into the wind to launch. It can launch the F-35B from a standstill, just 80 miles from the target. Because the Baton was positioned closer, F-35Bs can reach.
Yeah, that B element just makes it really overpowered, in my opinion, because they had to invent an entire new type of technology with electromagnetism instead of steam, because catapult is an issue, logistical issue. Like, you need to worry about how you're going to do that. But B basically limits that, right? So why not make all of them like B? I know it's a fuel problem. Because of the fan, you could put less fuel in it. That's probably the reason. I don't know, in my opinion, B makes it like really overpowered.
Caracas in 11 minutes. Why use the short-range F-35B? Because in literal warfare, we accept a calculated trade-off. We trade range for immediacy. The F-35C on the Ford buys us distance. The F-35B on the Baton buys us time.
Yeah, this is where the newer planes like F-47, other ones that they're trying to do, right, with the Navy one. They are making like, what is it, twice or more than twice the range of F-35 and F-22, right? They're trying to achieve that. Imagine if they had that plane. Imagine if that F-47. They didn't need to worry about range, or they didn't need to worry about any of that. They could have just circled on, because the range is probably insane. They're trying to make a plane that can like traverse through Pacific and all the way to China. A fighter jet, not a bomber. That is insanity, but they're somehow trying to make it.
At 3:00 a.m., when the extraction became contested, F-35Bs were overhead by 3:11. F-35Cs from the Ford arrived as backup at 3:28. This is layered response, the dagger and the sledgehammer. But neither weapon fired a shot. The mere presence of stealth fighters overhead ended.
Yeah, when America is going full ADHD and logistical nightmare, why would you throw any shot? Of course there was no shot. Imagine the people there. Like, man, we didn't do anything. We couldn't even shoot a missile. Nobody did anything. Yeah, of course they didn't do anything. This is basically, entering a bar fight with an entire squad of UFC fighters. Why would anybody fight you? Like, this is basically game over. This is literally prevention, right? Deterrent. Why spend so much money in military? Because it's a fucking deterrent. Nobody's gonna die from your side.
The resistance. This is deterrence theory validated. The weapon you don't fire is more powerful than the one you do.
Yeah,
So how did the United States...
I love Chinook, man. I still remember that image of the pilot literally touching its ass on literally a platform type thing so people can just dislodge this massive fucking helicopter that needs big two propellers. That is just insane to me, that level of accuracy.
Capture a head of state without leveling a city? Physics, mathematics, and a $13 billion aircraft carrier. The sonic shield didn't exist because some admiral wanted cool technology. It existed because engineers asked a better question. Not how do we destroy, but how do we win without destruction? The answer was mathematics. Position the fleet at the
That also like separate, this is what free world does. In a democracy, you have obviously all the bureaucracy, but you have a chain of command where people are given free rein, like how to make things more efficient, rather than somebody from the top just saying, do that. If you tell people to do something, they're gonna fuck it up, not make it perfectly, or not even think outside of the box. Another issue I think China might have. There's a reason why China constantly acquires technology, let's just say, rather than inventing their own. Because if the chain of command says like, you have to do this, your defense agency has to do this, you kind of like tying their hands, right? You need innovation, you need to let people think. This is what this is.
Optimal radius. Launch aircraft at sustainable frequency. Create acoustic camouflage through sustained noise. None of this required new physics. It required applying known physics with unprecedented precision. On the night of January 3rd, that ship coordinated over...
I'm a very scientific guy. Every time he says new physics, this physics, everything's physics. But yeah, okay.
Over 100 aircraft without a single mid-air incident. It provided real-time intelligence while jamming enemy communications. And when the mission ended, it recovered every single aircraft safely. 0 casualties, 0 collateral damage. The teenager operating the catapult controls on the Ford doesn't know he just participated in a historic operation.
That's what I mean, right? Like they're literally using this Ford aircraft carrier. They don't even know what the fuck is happening at the scale. This is properly being used. Unlike F-22, this is used very early.
A 19-year-old from Wisconsin who enlisted because college was too expensive. But his job, launching aircraft every 45 seconds for 6 straight hours without error, was the difference between success
For only one guy? I highly doubt that.
and catastrophe. American military dominance doesn't come from billion-dollar missiles. It comes from 19-year-olds executing physics problems perfectly under pressure. The United States doesn't need to invade your country. We can end your government from 380 miles offshore using mathematics. And sound waves. That's not a threat.
We basically described science. If you're at the peak of science, America is, yeah.
That's a physics demonstration. If this breakdown of tactical geometry and applied physics changed how you think about modern warfare, hit that like button.
Well, go to the video page link and from there support this channel. It was a really awesome video. Yeah. This wasn't about sonic weapons, obviously, but yeah, sonic shields. It's about, Ford aircraft carrier and logistical power of America. This was awesome. Right, well, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.